Good afternoon, everyone. This is Martha Maloney, Director of Marketing and Communications for the University of Maryland, Upper Chesapeake Health. I'm really glad you joined us here today. The topic of our discussion is the pandemic is not over. And I'm proud to introduce two very important team members here at University of Maryland, Upper Chesapeake Health to talk about why the COVID pandemic is not over and what it will take for us to reach that finish line. Dr. Fahim Yunus is an infectious disease expert and our Chief Quality Officer, and Vicki Bands, who is not only an experienced nurse, but she's Director of our Community Health and Outreach team, and she's quickly becoming the vaccine queen of Harford County. Thank you both for joining us today. Let's start with you, Dr. Yunus. You know, we're starting to see many things open up, restaurants and bars and whatnot. I know that you want this over as much as any of us, but it's not over, is it?
No, not at all. We are making progress, but we are at the same level now where we were at our first peak, believe it or not. So this is how quickly human mind can normalize everything, even though, yes, we are on a downturn here. Yes, things are much better than where we were in January, but we are nowhere near normal.
Great. So what's it going to take?
Well, it's going to take a lot of things, and for all of us to come together and first accept the reality, number one. Number two, use the evidence-based measures. And number three is going to be vaccine.
Vaccinate, 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 right?
That's the message.
Okay, and so what are some of the metrics you look at from a community standpoint here in Harford County, for example?
Exactly, so we look at how many tests being done in the county are coming back positive. We call it the test positivity rate. Right after Thanksgiving, believe it or not, Harford County peaked at 22% positivity.
Wow.
And at that time, Baltimore and Arundel counties were around 13 to 14%. So we had that much more virus in the community. Now it's going down to like 7%, but at the same time, if you look at Baltimore City, they're in the 3% range. So for some strange reason, we here in Harford County are experiencing a higher number of virus and test positivity in our community as compared to other counties in the state.
So what are some of the things that we're going to be excited about? Where do we need to be?
Right, so I think where we need to be is once we get to a consistent, sustained positivity of less than 1%. For example, influenza. A typical flu season, you would see our test positivity go up to 25, 30%. This year, that positivity has been 0.1. And goes to show that masks work, because the masks and social distancing, that is the only thing different. Otherwise, influenza is no kinder to us. And we would want COVID, and we will get it there, to under 1%. That's our goal.
Still do the same thing even if you're vaccinated? We still need to wear masks? And
well, in the early phases, of course, once a lot of us get vaccinated, about 60 to 70% in the community, the goal for the vaccine is so we can get rid of this mask. But we have to, like everything else, you walk before you run. So in our hospital, for example, our team member vaccination is much higher than the community. So our risk is different in the hospital. This is why we have to look beyond our individual interests into the communal interest. I have to think of my family, of my grandparents, of my neighbors. That's how you get to have open societies and open schools. If everyone is just focused on their own individual interest, it'll be harder.
so you mentioned vaccination. So let's turn over to
The vaccine queen.
the vaccine queen of Harford County. Vicki, you and your vaccination team, they've just done outstanding work on vaccination, not just here with our team, but in our community. I know that you've been partnering with the Harford County Health Department to take it on the road. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We have been really lucky to partner with the Harford County Health Department, and we sort of decided, up front who was going to vaccinate what and where, and that has worked really a good strategy for us. So nobody's duplicating services, and we're making sure we're covering everyone. So we have been focusing on the independent senior housings throughout the county. There's 13 of them, and we have have been vaccinating on Tuesdays and Thursdays in that group, and we will finish early April with them, and we will have probably vaccinated about 500 of those folks in those individual independent senior housings. Some of those folks drive, and they've come to our clinic, and we've seen them, so we know they're coming. But there are still many, even though it's an independent senior housing, there are many that still cannot travel or have transportation. So they're the folks, really the most vulnerable ones, that we feel really wonderful about being able to get going to the actual senior housing and getting those folks vaccinated.
Great. So now we're at 2A, is that?
You are at
No?
2A, yes.
So if those of us listening, how do they sign up? Can they still go to the Get the Vaccine site?
They can. There's, you can go to the MDH site, and they will list all of the locations, all of the pharmacies, the different pharmacies in the different counties. They can look by county to see where they can register. But for us, for Upper Chesapeake, we are running clinics 5 days a week at both hospitals, and a 6th day here at Upper Chesapeake or in the county. So Saturdays are sort of out and about or here. And they can go to our website, the umuch.org website, and up on the very top of the front page, there's a big red alert sign that talks about COVID. They click on that, and then it says, how do I get a COVID vaccine? They click on that, and then the registration is there. Okay. And once it's their turn, they will get a link that is only their link. Once they open, it's a dead link. But they will then be able to schedule their appointment with us.
Good, so it's a unique link to the person getting the shot.
Absolutely.
So we're going to put in the comments section the direct link of umuch.org/get-the-vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be able to get all the information, including some of the mass sites that are set up.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. So what else for you? Tell me about this mobile clinic. You know, if it wasn't for you, you took over flu vaccines many years ago, and now you seem to be the trailblazer with the COVID vaccine. Have truck will travel. So
it's wonderful having a house on wheels. We can go anywhere, but we are taking it mobile. That allows us really to get again into those vulnerable populations. And many of our folks, we have a system set up here in the United States that people have to register online. And as we know, there are many folks that don't have that opportunity, either through a computer or a smartphone or whatever, or just the capability of being able to register that way. So with us being able to be so mobile and flexible, as long as we have the supply of vaccine, we can get to those vulnerable populations and be able to get those folks vaccinated.
Great. Very cool. Anything else you want people to know about the COVID vaccine before we take some questions from the audience?
I want them to know that and we've seen it out there, the best vaccine, and I think Dr. Eunice has said that the best vaccine for you is the vaccine that you can get. And I really want people to understand that all 3 of these vaccines are good vaccines, then they are effective vaccines, and you need to get out there and get vaccinated. We get lots of questions. It's always surprising to me. People ask me, well, what vaccine do you have today? And I always think to myself, I'm not sure it makes a difference. I've got an appointment for you, let's get you vaccinated. But I get that. People see, with the media that, they may think that they're not getting the best vaccine, but they are all 3 excellent vaccines, and they are effective, and everyone needs to get one.
One thing we hear a lot about is side effects, and I know you've given a lot of shots yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of reassure people about what you've seen just on the hundreds of people that you've vaccinated?
We see very little side effects, and they really aren't side effects. It's sort of just their reaction to the vaccine, their body's reaction to the actual vaccine. We see the things that we see immediately when we really look at the situation, a lot of it is anxiety. People come in with this being a vaccine that no one's had before. They don't have the history like the flu vaccine, and sometimes they come in they're pretty nervous. And so I think anxiety plays a lot into that, as well as we could always see in the evening we have more people who feel a little woozy because they don't eat and they don't drink, and so we have to address that issue as well. And so when they come back for their second shot, we make some recommendations. But Dr. Eunice's words of wisdom to me are always in my mind, and I have told more people. He told me, Vicki, you're not going to die from the vaccine. If you get COVID, I can't promise you that. So I have told more people that.
So true, so true. So Dr. Eunice, would you agree with this assessment? Now we're months into having vaccine,
Absolutely. I think look at the whole world. Over 400 million people have gotten the shot so far, different vaccines. There is some fact and there is some fiction. Like Vicky said, I completely agree. For 1 or 2 days, you may have arm pain, you may have fevers, you may get chills, you may feel achy, you may go to sleep early. If you're like me, that's a good thing. But those are the things to be expected. In 1 or 2 days, those symptoms will go away. And that's, again, we keep saying it's a good thing because your body received a message through that vaccine to do something. And your immune system really was doing that thing, making those antibodies. After those 2 days is fiction, largely. Because by now we have, imagine the 30,000 or more people who originally received the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. Now they're almost 6 months out. We have not seen any bad side effects in them in 6 months. So I always ask people, those who say long-term side effects, what is long-term? Is it 1 year? Is it 10 years? Is it a lifetime? And you have to weigh it against the daily risk of COVID. When we get into a car, we don't say, let me get to Delaware and then I'll put my seatbelt on. We put it immediately because we know the moment we're out of the garage, something could happen. We've seen hundreds of COVID patients at Upper Chesapeake so far. I can't tell you how many patients now with the vaccine era who said, I already got my first shot and now I'm COVID positive. Those who said, I just got my shot the day after, I started becoming sick the day after. So things are happening all the time. The risk of COVID is always there. So therefore, I think timing of this vaccine is important. You don't want to wait too long.
Very good. Good. Well, thank you guys so much. I thought maybe we could see if there's some questions to answer, some
Absolutely.
folks.
The whole idea of this Facebook Live is for us to have our community access to us and ask any question without the fear, without any hesitations. No question is a stupid question. Nothing is taken personally. You won't hurt our feelings by saying anything. I mean, we are here to serve you. So just go right ahead and ask your questions.
Great. And Emily, if we could have you check and see what we've got.
Yeah, we have a good amount of questions on Facebook and on Twitter. So I'm going to start on our Facebook Live questions that just came up. We have one from Ravi and says, can I get infected with COVID after taking the second dose? If yes, which steps should I take then?
Great question, Ravi. So first of all, you are immune to the maximum degree 2 to 3 weeks after your second dose. Number one, 2 weeks after, so that's easy, 2 and 2. 2 shots and 2 weeks later, your immunity is there. Despite that, remember these vaccines under best case scenario are 95% effective, which means 1 out of 20 people, if they all stopped wearing masks and went to a bar to enjoy a big party and they got exposed, 1 out of those 20 will still get COVID. So what you need to do is until we have enough community immunity, you need to be careful. You need to avoid those situations. You need to continue to wear your mask, not because you're afraid, because you want multiple layers of protection. That's what we do, right? Again, we have seat belts, we have multiple, there's so many different defense mechanisms in a car now to keep you safe. Similarly, against COVID, you want to do multiple things, but I hope that I answered your question.
That's great. Okay, we have another question from Becky on Facebook. She says, can you please share your data on why these are good and effective vaccines? I think because you've mentioned the 2 vaccines currently on the live.
Sure. So Becky, I think both of these vaccines, including Johnson & Johnson, if you look at all 3 of them, they've been tested in over 100,000 people, number one. And number 2, we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, all published. You can Google it. One thing I always tell people in this age of disinformation, how do you figure out what to trust? I always say, go and look for information yourself. And don't believe on information that's pushed upon you, right? When somebody calls you and says, I'm calling from IRS and I need your social security, you don't want to do that because you didn't make that phone call. When you initiate the phone call, you have different level of trust. So first of all, you can get all of that data online. Number two, those 50, 70-page documents that were submitted to FDA, we reviewed all of them. We've looked at the efficacy is about 94, 95% for both Pfizer and Moderna. But the most important data point, Becky, is how many patients after receiving these vaccines ended up getting hospitalized or dying. That number is close to 0%. Nothing will ever be zero, but it's pretty close to zero. And that is why we believe these are the best tools to end the pandemic right now.
Great, thanks for answering that. We have another question from Lynn. She says, with approximately a third of Marylanders are now vaccinated, why are we seeing increasing numbers in our metrics? Are those of us who are vaccinated safe with these increasing numbers?
Great question. I may see it differently because I think the key point you have to remember, how many have gotten 2 shots and are 2 weeks out? Because media is reporting how many vaccines administered, right? Those are 2 different metrics. If you look at how many people have received a shot in Maryland, that may be 1/3. If you look at how many people are immune with 2 shots and 2 weeks out, that number is around 12% in Harford County. So there you go, right there. Why we are still seeing more infections and why this pandemic isn't over. I know, guys, we're all sick and tired. I am as exhausted as you are. But a marathon runner does not run 23, 24, 25 miles only to stop running when he sees the finish line. He keeps pushing because he knows he can still lose the race. So just a little bit longer. We're almost there.
Awesome. So we're getting lots of questions coming in, so we're going to try to take as many as we can. But the next question is from Christina. I have a handful of close family members that refuse to get vaccinated for reasons varying from politics to conspiracy theories. What is the one most important thing I could tell them to perhaps convince them to get their vaccine?
So, wow. I knew that now we are at the real part of the conversation. I'll tell you, my job is to not convince anyone. I don't convince, I convey. And I'd request the same thing to you. First, I think we gotta come from a place of caring and compassion. I don't label people, I respect them even if they disagree with me. I think there is reason to be skeptical. You look in our society, there is mistrust built into so many things that we do. So first of all, I respect those people, but I would love to engage in a conversation. I think everybody's love language is different. It's gonna be hard to pick one reason. If this is someone who's 26-year-old and they really love their grandma and they go visit their grandma all the time, my reason will be, well, you could pass on to your grandma. You could kill your grandmother. You'll be fine, likely, but she's gonna have a bad. If it's somebody who's pregnant, my reason may be, well, this may protect your baby. So this is all gonna depend on individual situations, but I believe we need to have a lot of very open conversations, and I hope that your question triggers more questions. Why people believe it's a conspiracy theory? Why people don't like this vaccine or have mistrust? We would love to answer those questions.
Great. We have a lot of questions. I'm trying to roll through them, but segueing into that last comment you made, Dr. Eunice, we have another question from Heather. She says, do you know when to anticipate a vaccine for children?
So Moderna has already started those clinical trials. We know that Pfizer is also decreasing the age. They're now testing it on 12-year-olds. Moderna has started 6 months and older. Those trials are likely going to be completed by the end of this year, and it's very, very likely that early next year they should be with an EUA, what we call an emergency use authorization. But I would not be surprised if it happens sooner than that. But 2020 for sure. 2022 for sure.
Awesome. So we have another question relating to the holidays that are coming up from Crystal on Facebook. She says, are we concerned with Easter and Memorial Day causing another wave?
Yeah, Crystal, you're absolutely right. It's people, not the holidays, right? Holidays are innocent. It's just us because we get
Mhm.
overexcited. So my point will be absolutely, the surge we saw in January was a predictable surprise. University of Maryland Medical System generated a press release in November alerting everyone, guys, we need to be careful. Human beings we are complex people, we are complex machines. Some of us were careful, some not so, and we saw a big surge. My guess, my hope, my optimism is we will probably not see a similar surge again, but right now we want to crush this pandemic. So anytime this virus goes from a 3% to 4%, to me that's a loss. We need to go from 3% to 2%. So to answer your question, yes, with Easter, with other holidays coming up, there is a fear that we will see upticks and we need to remain very cautious.
Great. So we have another question, this time actually from Twitter. It's funny because I wonder the same question all of the time. Is there any need to wear face masks inside the car?
If you're by yourself inside the car, there was never a need to wear a face mask. Not on day one of this pandemic when we had no vaccine, and not today. If you are with other people in a car, that's a very high risk situation. Because remember now, you are in a very closed space, poorly ventilated, within 6 feet of each other, probably having a good time. So avoid that. At the same time, if this is family unavoidable, try to wear the best quality mask that you can wear, not just a mask. Forget about a matching mask, a designer mask. Come on, I'm gonna be a doctor. You can hate me for that. I'm gonna tell you what's the right thing to do. Try to get a KN95 mask. They're available online. If not, wear a surgical mask like this. Try to open a window, particularly now with the weather opening up. If you're by yourself, no need to wear a mask in the car.
Great. I think we're going to wrap it up with one more question because we're reaching our time. But we have one more from Jeanette from Facebook. She asked, why is the vaccine now not FDA approved?
It's a good thing in my opinion, because FDA gives an emergency use authorization before they can see more data, and at some stage, yes, it will be approved like all other vaccines. It's just the scientific process. And I am actually reassured by that. Anytime you see a little side effect of a vaccine, or even the hint of a side effect, for example, recently they were talking about clots secondary to AstraZeneca. Some people were freaking out. I was actually feeling great because I knew it's not the vaccine causing the clots, but it shows me the system is working. This vaccine is under such scrutiny that anything, the moment it causes something wrong, we will find out. So for that same reason, under an EUA, emergency use authorization, FDA can still require certain level of data on these vaccines. So it's still being monitored. In a way, I would call it a phase 4 trial that is still going on. So it gives you a guarded approval. It's not an indication of poor quality vaccine. It's an indication of a high quality process.
Great. So we actually have one more comment, not a question, but it says, Dr. Eunice, you rock.
Oh, thank you,
Isn't that
thank
nice?
you.
Listen, I think we had a lot of good questions, and I thank both of you for your efforts to educate the community, and I think you're both willing to do this again if we can get an audience, right?
I think our job, so short answer is absolutely yes. I can't speak for Vicky, but you guys are our family. This is where we work, this is where we practice, and we take care of you. I would love to see you in a park. Tell me to see you in the mall. I don't want to see you in the hospital. I don't want to see you in room 232 because I know what happens in the hospital. So as long as you have questions, I will make time. And I know my colleagues will make time. But we need to be having a real conversation with an open mind. I don't have any other agenda. I told my agenda up front. I'll see you anywhere else in the county, not inside this hospital. I don't want to see you inside the hospital. We want to keep you healthy and happy and safe.
Great. Well, thank you both. We really appreciate it. And everyone, if you have other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we'll get to them. And we'll look and see another way to get this information to you, perhaps in a Zoom call coming up. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.